Okay, Hadrian, welcome to everybody. We would like to start by giving the floor first to Hadrian Cummins. Welcome and thank you for opening the event.
En primer lugar, a Cummins, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí y por abrir el evento. Muchísimas gracias, Emily. Buenos días a todos. Soy Adrian Cummins y soy cofundador y codirector del Centro LENAPI, que es una organización indígena con base aquí en Manhattan. Soy miembro adoptado de una tribu LENAPI y nuestra organización sin ánimo de lucro se creó en el año 2009 con la misión de continuar LENAPI hacking, la tierra madre donde nos encontramos hoy, mediante la comunidad, las artes, cultura, la diáspora LENAPI, que está extendida por todos los Estados Unidos y Canadá, e incluye 5 naciones reconocidas, 3 en los Estados Unidos y 2 en Canadá. Nuestro trabajo es un llamado a la vuelta a nuestro hogar, a nuestra tierra madre. Una historia muy difícil de genocidio, de desplazamiento forzoso y de ecocidio. Esta mañana me han pedido que comparta con ustedes unas palabras de bienvenida en nombre de los mayores y las mayores del Centro LENAPI. En el dialecto estamos muy contentos y contentas porque han venido todos ustedes al LENAPI Center. Muchísimas gracias, que puedan vivir en bienestar y en concordancia con los valores del LENAPI de armonía, reciprocidad, compasión, equilibrio. Son valores que intentamos fomentar en estos tiempos de crisis climática. Dicho esto, diré que para nosotras y nosotros es un honor formar parte de estos debates. Les damos la bienvenida y nos deseamos todo lo mejor. Wanishi.
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 Good morning, everyone. So it's William here from the Vanuatu mission. We're glad to be your host this morning. And I wish to acknowledge the permanent mission of Costa Rica as a co-sponsor of this event, and also the Normandía Chair for Peace. I wish to thank you for being part of this event. Not forgetting also the major partners that are organizing this event. So I wish to extend this warm welcome to the audience, participants. Thank you for making time to be here with us, to be part of this very important discussion on climate change, and also to those who are watching online. Thank you for your participation. On March this year, UNGA adopted a resolution which requests the ICJ to provide an advisory opinion on the issue of climate change as it affects peoples, especially the rights of people, present and future generation. So today, one of the key objectives of this event is to basically share information, stimulate some interest, and encourage countries and international organizations, and your role as key players in the area of climate change can also add value to the whole effort to support the proceedings at the ICJ. So we look forward to your very interactive discussion to enrich our understanding on processes and as we prepare for the proceedings at the ICJ. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanlan and William. We now have Professor Dick Robinson to give welcome words from the Normandía Chair for Peace. Professor Robinson is online. Professor Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Alyn. And good morning to all of you. Buenos días a todos. Bonjour à tous. It's a great pleasure on behalf of the Normandy Chair for Peace to also extend welcome and greetings to everyone, those from around the world who are online and those who are in the conference room. The Normandy Chair for Peace and the current holder of the chair, Tony Aposa from the Philippines, Emily Gaillard, the director of the scientific program, has been a major force for developing cooperation internationally on problems of the environment, on problems of the challenge that climate change is bringing to all of us, and above all, to further the mission of making peace with nature. We cannot have peace on Earth as humans unless we make peace with nature. We are all part of the Earth. We are all part of the biosphere. And this theme has been advanced by the chairholder, Tony Aposa, very strongly from the Philippines in advancing what he has characterized as the Good Stories movement. We have good stories to say about how we shall save the planet. They are stories of restoration. They are stories, as the Lenape have taught us in Lenape Hoking, of reciprocity and being at peace, at balance with nature. And so the challenge of this webinar is to bring these themes together with a focus on the advisory opinion that the United Nations General Assembly has requested the International Court of Justice to deliver, perhaps sometime next year. This is a world unique moment to have all of the nations, all of the international organizations focused on the question of what are the obligations of states today to work on helping all of us in solidarity deal with the problems of climate change, problems that are afflicting us even as we participate in this webinar. It is not just sea level rise and the challenges to the existence of nations and people's homes. It is not just the protection of photosynthesis in the forests when every province in Canada has forest fires that are out of control right now, and the air pollution is moving again toward Manhattan. It's already in different parts of North America from the burning of the fires. We have extreme heat, we have droughts. We don't need to debate anymore what to do. We need to have clear guidance. What are our legal obligations to act, to avert a global catastrophe? And I think we can do it. We have time to reshape our systems, to leave fossil fuels behind and move on to renewable energy, wind and solar, hydropower. Even the waves, of course, create energy that can be tapped around the world. So our mission is to move on beyond what the Industrial Revolution gave us, move into a new kind of ecological framework in which we live as part of nature, with nature, and stop the depredations which, as humans and our economy, we are inflicting upon ourselves and upon the biosphere. I wish everyone in this meeting a great success. The second session, of course, will be on another question that the Normandy Chair for Peace has specialized in, and this is the question of intergenerational equity and how we today shall be good ancestors for those who come after us tomorrow. We have much to do to prepare for dealing with a society that values its young and those who have yet to be born as much as it values itself and those who came before it. So I wish all the participants very good success, and the Normandy Chair for Peace has had a wonderful 3 years of advancing this agenda. It's been my privilege to be the Chair Emeritus of this effort. I want especially to thank and commend in closing Vanuatu. Vanuatu has been a world leader in bringing this question to the International Court of Justice. The mission to the UN has been exemplary in its work with all of the missions to the UN to frame the question and bring the question to the International Court of Justice. And I also chair the International Council of Environmental Law, and we and others, including the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, will be working diligently over the next few months to present materials to the International Court of Justice in support of its advisory opinion. So good luck to you in your deliberations.
Thank you very much, Professor Robinson. Thank you also, Mr. Collins and Mr. William, for the welcoming words. My name is Alyn Ware, and I'm going to be chairing this session of today's event. And the event is on both the International Court of Justice case, the advisory opinion on climate change, and on the UN Summit of the Future, and in particular highlighting the rights of future generations. And so session 1 today, we are focusing on the ICJ case itself and on this particular part of the timing of the process, which is encouraging governments and international organizations to participate in the court. And the second session will be looking at the UN Summit of the Future and how the deliberations and where would possibly the decision from the International Court of Justice might have some influence on the UN Summit of the Future to ensure that it's an effective summit and that the rights of future generations and the legal obligations to protect the climate for future generations are a highlight and made very strong in the Summit of the Future and in other follow-up processes. So thank you very much for all of those who have joined us today in the room here in New York. Thank you also for everyone who's joining online. And just to let you know that the proceedings today are being translated simultaneously in Arabic, French, and Spanish. Online, you can see that in the translation button on the bottom of your screen. And if you're here in the room and you'd like to listen to it in one of those languages, then if you link into the Zoom link and use your device, your laptop or your tablet or your smartphone with headphones, you'll be able to listen to the translation as well. So
just if you connect in the room, please mute.
Muten a big thank you to the permanent missions of Vanuatu and Costa Rica for co-hosting this event along with Normandie Chair for Peace, and particularly the permanent mission of Vanuatu. As you've heard, Vanuatu has been leading first the core group of countries and then the group of co-sponsors of the UNGA resolution to get this case into the court, and has done a fabulous job of building sufficient support and agreement to this process that the UNGA resolution to take the case to the International Court of Justice got adopted without any opposition. This is really important because it's indicated to the court the support for this approach, that it is really important to be able to have legal clarity of what are the obligations, both to protect the climate for current and future generations, but also to address the impact that climate change is already having, particularly on the most impacted communities and the most impacted countries. Two very important questions going to the court, and the fact that we're going to the court without dissension, without opposition, is sending a very strong signal to the court that this is an important case. So much so that we have seen the court already responding favorably to requests not only from states to participate in the proceedings, but from international organizations.
en los procedimientos y también por parte de las organizaciones internacionales. Ya ha habido 3 organizaciones internacionales que han sido autorizadas para participar en el proceso. Por eso hemos invitado a este evento no solo a los miembros de las Naciones Unidas, sino también a representantes de organizaciones internacionales. Y el tercer sector es la sociedad civil, que también desempeña un papel fundamental. La sociedad civil no tiene, digamos, no tiene derecho a voz en la Corte Internacional, pero pueden desempeñar un papel con países, para con los países partes, para con las organizaciones, proporcionando historias, narrativas, evidencias, para, digamos, apoyar en la transmisión de información y después en las sesiones orales, que serán muy importantes para las deliberaciones después del acuerdo. Muchísimas gracias por ayudar. Esto es un momento crucial. Hay personas aquí que llevamos implicadas desde muchos años en previos procesos. Yo comencé como jovencito en los años 90, ayudando a llevar el proceso contra las armas nucleares entre la Corte Internacional de Justicia, y hay generaciones mucho más jóvenes. Es un placer ver a las personas jóvenes que están muy comprometidas. Es algo muy importante asegurarse de que esto de verdad es un evento también multigeneracional. Y bueno, sin más, vamos a escuchar el discurso clave del fiscal general de Vanuatu, que no ha podido estar aquí en persona, pero que sí nos ha grabado un vídeo, y voy a pedir a nuestra persona técnica que, por favor, nos ofrezca el discurso del fiscal general de Vanuatu. No escuchamos. No escuchamos. Queremos una decisión que priorice la equidad intergeneracional y que esté durante más de 5 décadas. Lo sentimos, no escuchamos. Lo sentimos, no escuchamos. Les ofreceremos una interpretación en cuanto seamos capaces de escuchar. Ha habido corrimientos de tierra que han acabado con pueblos enteros, con comunidades enteras, y hay impactos del cambio climático que acaban con nuestras cosechas. La denegación política de la ciencia también durante las negociaciones del clima de las Naciones Unidas en Alemania resurgió, y los países partes rechazaron reconocer que el panel, el informe AR6 del IPCC, que es la evaluación más robusta e integral sobre las cuestiones del impacto climático, y nos dice que hemos de actuar para limitar el aumento de las temperaturas por debajo de estar por debajo de 1,5 grados centígrados. El cambio climático está aumentando y será exponencialmente peor para las zonas más afectadas. Queridos amigos y amigas, esto no es solo un problema de Vanuatu. Lo que estamos padeciendo ahora, y que hemos padecido ya durante muchos años, es lo que el resto del mundo, el resto del planeta va a empezar a sentir. Sentimos mucha empatía con ustedes, los Estados Unidos, que en el resto del mundo desarrollado, y les pedimos valor para poder cambiar esto, para poder intervertir esto. Hace 7 años, 196 países adoptaron un tratado internacional que muchos pensaban que nos llevaría a salir del desastre climático. Muchos países celebraron esto como este acuerdo como un acuerdo que nos llevaría por la senda adecuada. Sin embargo, a pesar de las promesas y compromisos, no estamos logrando estar por debajo del aumento de 1,5 grados. Prácticamente nos sentimos. El derecho internacional es muy amplio y es integral y los acuerdos de París no son el único tratado que contiene obligaciones para los Estados parte para prevenir el daño climático y proteger los derechos humanos. Por eso, la iniciativa transformadora de Vanuatu ante la Corte Internacional de Justicia ha surgido, porque sin ambición estamos viendo que el cambio climático va a seguir adelante. Necesitamos que la autoridad judicial más importante a nivel planetario se pronuncie y que hable de las consecuencias. Necesitamos del cambio climático. Necesitamos una opinión consultiva por parte de la Corte Internacional de Justicia que establezca una línea clara de lo que se debe, lo que no se debe hacer en torno a las negociaciones climáticas y lo que es responsabilidad jurídica no negociable para los Estados. En nuestra visión, la acción climática no es simplemente una cuestión de discrecionalidad, sino que es un requisito bajo el derecho internacional que de no cumplirse tiene enormes consecuencias. Específicamente necesitamos obligaciones relevantes con respecto a la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, a la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos y a los pactos internacionales sobre derechos civiles y políticos y sobre derechos culturales, sociales y económicos. Y también al Convenio sobre los Derechos de la Infancia, el Convenio de las Naciones Unidas sobre la Ley del Mar, el Derecho del Mar y el Acuerdo de Viena, el Acuerdo de Protocolo sobre sustancias que destruyen la capa de ozono, la CBD, la Convención sobre Diversidad Biológica, la Convención de las Naciones Unidas para combatir la desertificación y muchos más útiles. Pero ¿cómo las obligaciones bajo un cuerpo tan enorme de tratados existentes aplicarse? Los estudiantes de las universidades de las islas del Pacífico se lo preguntaron, llevaron ideas al gobierno de Vanuatu y desde el gobierno les escuchamos. Esos debates se convirtieron en un llamado internacional para la claridad y para la justicia. Vanuatu aceptó el llamado de nuestra juventud y desde entonces ha liderado la campaña mano con ellos y con ellas para buscar una opinión consultiva sobre el cambio climático por parte de la Corte Internacional de Justicia. La Corte de Justicia Internacional de las Naciones Unidas es el órgano principal en materia de justicia de las Naciones Unidas. Todavía no ha tenido una oportunidad para ayudar a enfrentar el cambio climático. Para poder llegar a la Corte Internacional, nos aliamos con otros países, incluyendo Alemania y otras 3 naciones europeas, para llevar esta cuestión tan impactante ante la Corte. Hubo múltiples procesos de consulta, recibimos el feedback y también hubo buena voluntad de todos los rincones del planeta. Y lo que muchos de nosotros pensábamos, o muchas personas pensaban que era simplemente un brindis al sol, acabó como resolución adoptada por la Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas. Históricamente, para que haya una petición ante la Corte, la resolución tenía que adoptarse por consenso. Pueden leer la resolución completamente en www.vanuatuicj.com, pero también tienen un resumen aquí. En primer lugar, ¿cuáles son las obligaciones de los estados para garantizar una protección del sistema climático y de otros elementos del medio ambiente, de las emisiones antropogénicas de gases de efecto invernadero? Segundo, ¿cuáles son las consecuencias legales para los estados en las que sus emisiones han causado un daño significativo con respecto a los pequeños estados insulares y otros estados vulnerables y los pueblos, las personas, los individuos de las generaciones presentes y futuras? Esas son las preguntas en resumen. Y es nuestra visión que estas preguntas son muy interesantes y que la respuesta por parte del Alto Tribunal Mundial será un antes y un después en derecho internacional y que llevará digamos, un replanteamiento de los derechos humanos, del derecho en materia de derechos humanos a nivel internacional. Quiero dejar muy claro que esta iniciativa no intenta, digamos, perseguir o avergonzar a ningún país de nación. Y que a pesar de que la hayamos llevado ante la Corte Internacional de Justicia, no queremos que se tome una decisión jurídica contra nadie. No queremos que ningún Estado se vea obligado a nada. Lo que estamos pidiendo es clarificación sobre las obligaciones legales ya adoptadas en derecho internacional. No estamos creando nuevas leyes. La pregunta, además, se dirige al futuro, considerando tanto las emisiones históricas como las emisiones actuales y futuras. La opinión consultiva resultante ayudará a los estados a revisar y mejorar sus contribuciones nacionales bajo el Acuerdo de París y a fortalecer sus políticas y leyes nacionales. La opinión consultiva también identificará lagunas en derecho internacional que nos ayudarán a construir y mejorar nuestros procesos de negociaciones climáticas multilaterales. La opinión consultiva también garantizará una base para nuestras relaciones en torno a la adherencia a este elemento del derecho internacional. Como hemos visto recientemente con la guerra muy desestabilizadora de Ucrania, necesitamos un marco internacional legal que esté claro sobre lo que son comportamientos aceptables a nivel de los estados y lo que no. El Estado de Derecho es algo fundacional desde el punto de vista de las Naciones Unidas y su misión por la paz. Vanuatu se enorgullece de ser uno de los partners, de los socios de esta iniciativa, junto con otros países y más de 2.000 organizaciones de la sociedad civil de todo el mundo. Hemos trabajado para redactar una serie de demandas en pro de las generaciones futuras ante la Corte Internacional de Justicia y seguiremos viendo a la juventud como nuestro mejor aliado en este proceso. ¿Cuál es el próximo paso? El 25 de abril del año 2023 se registró y se publicó frontalmente esta notificación ante la Corte Internacional de Justicia. El 20 de octubre del año 2023 es la fecha límite ante la cual se puede mandar documentación y el 22 de enero del año 2024 es la fecha límite desde la cual los estados y organizaciones tendrán que haber presentado declaraciones por escrito o comentarios por escrito en su nombre o en el de otros. Así que, por lo tanto, los estados, las organizaciones de las Naciones Unidas, organizaciones intergubernamentales y otros son invitadas a que desde sus perspectivas legales respondan y comenten en torno a estas dos cuestiones. Vanuatu y muchos otros estados nos hemos comprometido a transmitir voces no gubernamentales también en nuestras remisiones como Estado y buscar maneras creativas para asegurar la mayor inclusividad en el proceso. Ahora es esencial que todos los estados del sur global se empoderen para poder enviar sus contribuciones y, en segundo lugar, que estas contribuciones subrayen las obligaciones sustantivas desde el punto de vista del derecho internacional. Déjenme que les explique. Muchos países en el sur global nunca se han comprometido ante la Corte Internacional de Justicia y no conocen los procesos. Muchos no tienen experiencia legal en preparación de documentación remitida a la Corte Internacional de Justicia y no tienen experiencia redaccional en ese sentido. Necesitamos bajar estos obstáculos, eliminar estos obstáculos y ofrecerles el mayor apoyo técnico y legal pro bono que podamos. Yo, por tanto, les pido y les insto a ustedes, a sus redes, que contacten con nosotros con sus ayudas con sus ofrecimientos con ayudas legales y técnicas. Las obligaciones sustantivas deberían ser la focalización de este proceso. Sabemos que algunos estados ya quieren presentar argumentos que son solo obligaciones procedimentales relativas al cambio climático. Necesitamos que el mayor número de estados posible subrayen los instrumentos internacionales existentes, legales existentes, y los principios que exigen obligaciones sustantivas para que los estados tengan responsabilidad factual para actuar. Las remisiones por parte de los estados pueden enfatizar la cadena que ha llevado a estas emisiones. Algo muy importante, las remisiones a la Corte Internacional tienen que ver con una cuestión de obligaciones y hay que vincularlas a las fuentes internacionales de derecho internacional. Al día de hoy, al menos 50 países del sur global han confirmado que van a preparar sus remisiones, pero necesitan ayuda para ello. Vanuatu está organizando una sesión de redacción para fiscales generales del Pacífico en el próximo mes, porque se han pedido desde Asia, África, el Caribe y Latinoamérica. Si tienen redes o contactos que puedan influenciar, ahora mismo es el momento de movilizarlos antes de la fecha límite del 20 de octubre para entregar las remisiones a la Corte. Excelencia, señoras, señores, amigos, amigas, el Tribunal Superior a nivel planetario va a decidir. Tenemos muy poco tiempo en Vanuatu. Nuestros chicos y chicas están mostrando su liderazgo. Más allá de la Corte Internacional de Justicia, Vanuatu también está emprendiendo otras acciones para fortalecer y transformar el derecho internacional para la acción climática. Vanuatu y un grupo de otros países de opiniones similares han remitido ya una petición al Alto Tribunal de la Ley del Mar, del Derecho Marino y Delitos, para que las emisiones de efecto invernadero se vinculen a la Ley del Mar. Esperamos que esta opinión consultiva salga antes y que pueda añadir a las consideraciones del Tribunal de Derecho del Mar. Para rellenar las lagunas existentes en el derecho internacional, Vanuatu ahora está llevando adelante una iniciativa para criminalizar el ecocidio, que es el ecocidio un acto ilegal cometido con conocimiento, con consecuencias severas o amplias o a largo plazo contra el medio ambiente causado por esos actos a sabiendas. Criminalizar el ecocidio como el quinto crimen, el quinto delito ante el Estatuto de Roma podrá ayudar a eliminar estas actividades odiosas en el planeta. Junto al genocidio, los crímenes contra la humanidad, los crímenes de guerra o los crímenes de agresión. Con un delito, un crimen del ecocidio, podremos también acusar a personas individuales, responsabilizarlas, incluyendo líderes de algunos estados o de algunas empresas, para poder criminalizar los comportamientos inaceptables. Y en último lugar, también una laguna grande en el sistema de las Naciones Unidas en materia climática es la necesidad de actuar inmediatamente. No podemos aceptar la producción ampliada y la extracción ampliada de combustibles fósiles. Vanuatu fue la primera nación en pedir un tratado de no proliferación de combustibles fósiles que completaría y reforzaría la aplicación del Acuerdo de París, que no fue diseñado para enfrentar digamos, la fuente de las emisiones de efecto invernadero y la combustión, y la polución de origen fósil. Tal y como los riesgos de las armas nucleares exigían una acción rápida y determinada a nivel de derecho y cooperación internacional, también lo requiere el dejar de utilizar los combustibles fósiles y acelerar la adopción de soluciones de bajo consumo energético. Este nuevo mecanismo legal internacional solo funcionará si está suficientemente financiado. Sabemos que esto no sucederá sin un tratado de no proliferación de los combustibles fósiles, porque sin un acuerdo internacional, cada nación productora seguirá arguyendo que pueden extraer y producir hasta el último barril de petróleo que les quede. Necesitamos más fuerza, más impulso para crear un tratado de no proliferación de los combustibles fósiles. Y estos esfuerzos y este entusiasmo está creando más de 550 parlamentarios, más de 7 países y más de 2000 organizaciones de la sociedad civil, la Organización Mundial de la Salud y más de 1000 grupos religiosos, incluso el Senado del Estado de California han aprobado una resolución apoyando la negociación de este nuevo tratado. Habiendo dicho esto, les agradezco de nuevo por juntarse a los esfuerzos de Vanuatu, uno de los países más pequeños, pero una de las voces más altas en derecho internacional, que piden que este derecho sea una herramienta para motivar la acción climática que es necesaria para proteger a nuestras personas jóvenes. Y agradezco muy particularmente al Gobierno de Costa Rica y a la Cátedra Normandía para la Paz por ser coanfitriones con nosotros y nosotras. Compartimos la firme creencia en la responsabilización y la necesidad de aplicar y hacer cumplir el derecho internacional. Tienen ustedes aquí en Vanuatu un sólido aliado comprometido con el derecho internacional, con la justicia climática y con la equidad intergeneracional. Thank you, Tomás.
I want to thank very much the Attorney General of Vanuatu for that strong and significant statement and a very good outline of what has been planned, what is happening, and what are the expectations for this advisory opinion in the International Court of Justice. Just before passing the mic to the Deputy Ambassador of Vanuatu, I'd just like to highlight 2 points from what the Attorney General said. The first one is that we need to lower the barrier to the participation of states and international organizations in this case. Even if you are from a country, a UN member state, or an international organization that does not have experience with the International Court of Justice, that should not be a barrier to your participation. You can choose whether you want to make a very substantive and detailed submission or whether you want to make something shorter. And regardless of the length of it, every submission is going to be important. Some states and international organizations may prefer to focus more on the science and the facts, what is happening, the destruction being caused by climate emissions, which is very important. Facts are a very important part of any legal case. Others might want to focus very much on the law and the developing law, including that protecting rights of future generations. And we'll hear from Professor Gaillard soon about that, the emerging body of law to apply. Others may want to talk about their own experience as a country or as an international organization of how climate change is impacting them. And those stories are also very important. I remember in the International Court of Justice deliberations on the advisory opinion on the legality of the threat or use of nuclear weapons, one of the most powerful submissions was that from the Marshall Islands, which wasn't a long submission, but it was the testimony of Lijang Eknilang, a woman from the Marshall Islands who talked about the fact that women in the Marshall Islands, because of the nuclear tests that had been conducted 200 miles away from their islands, they had incredible cases of stillbirths, of deformed babies, and she herself had conceived 8 times and not once had been able to give birth to a live baby. Her personal story impacted the judges so much because they could see this is real. It's not just a political issue. This is something which is happening to people. So the stories are going to be very important as well. And with those 3 elements, we encourage any nation state and any international organization to work what's your story or what's the evidence or what's the law you want to bring to the court. But of course, there's going to be some collaboration and working to bring these together and find out who's doing what from Vanuatu. So the one other thing I just wanted to mention also in there is it's not just about what the problem is and what the law is, but what might some of the solutions be. And the Attorney General mentioned one of the solutions is to the drafting of a non-proliferation fossil fuel treaty. There will be other solutions that we brought to the court as well. And this is also important, putting out the solutions, because I agree with the Attorney General. We can turn this canoe around. We can do it. And the International Court of Justice is going to play a key role in bringing in the law, the facts, the stories, and solutions will help make that happen. So to tell us a little bit more about what's been coordinated in that and how Vanuatu is coordinating this, I'm going to now ask the Deputy Ambassador of the Vanuatu mission to come back to the floor and say a little bit more about the process that Vanuatu is doing to help organize this. Deputy Ambassador, Mr. Sanlan Williams, you have the floor.
Ante la ONU, que venga aquí. Sanlan William tiene la palabra.
Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Once again, Excellencies, distinguished participants,
Sus excelencias,
colleagues,
distinguidos participantes,
it's my great pleasure and privilege to be
es un placer
here
y un
with you
privilegio
today
para mí estar aquí con
in this
ustedes hoy
roundtable event.
en
I would like to,
esta mesa redonda.
acknowledge again your
Quisiera
very
agradecerles
attentive
una vez
listening
más
and interest
su
in this
escucha
session.
atenta y su interés en esta
building on
sesión.
from what the Attorney General has said with
Partiendo
us,
de lo que
I
dijo el
would
fiscal
like to just share
general,
with you
me
what we are doing here at the
gustaría
UN to
comentarles qué
facilitate
estamos haciendo
the
aquí en la
process of
ONU para
submission to the
facilitar el
ICJ.
proceso de
So climate change is a
solicitud ante
well-established
la CIJ.
issue
El
today
cambio climático es
that
un
may not
problema
have
que
been
está bien arraigado hoy
actively
en día.
considered in conventions
Quizá en el
developed in the
pasado
1980s.
no fue
The
lo
threat it
suficientemente
poses to
bien
state
considerado
sovereignty and
durante
livelihoods
los años
needs to be
80,
addressed.
pero
Having
la
said that,
soberanía y las formas de
while we
vida
may
deben
have
ser
treaties and
tomados en
conventions
cuenta.
today
Dicho
to
esto,
address
hemos
climate
tenido
change,
muchos
it
tratados,
has
muchas
become very
conferencias
clear
para
that we
tratar
are
este
still
tema, el cambio
doing not
climático,
enough
pero
to stay
está
within the 1.5 degrees
meridianamente claro
Celsius.
que no estamos
The
haciendo lo
IPCC
suficiente para
report
no superar ese grado y
demonstrates
medio.
a large gap between
El informe del
NDCs of
IPCC
states and the actions
demostró
that is actually needed
que
to
había una
successfully
brecha
affect the
entre
climate
los
catastrophe that
actos de los
awaits us.
estados
It
y
is because of
la
this
situación que
and
vivían al
issues
borde de
of
la
climate justice that
catástrofe. No
Vanuatu,
hacen lo suficiente.
together with a core group of countries,
Y Vanuatu,
has
junto
taken
con un
climate
pequeño
change
grupo de
to the
estados,
International Court of Justice.
ha
Today,
llevado el cambio
after a long
climático ante la
campaign
Corte Internacional
at
de
the United
Justicia. Hoy,
Nations, together with a core
tras una
group
larga
of
campaña
countries,
en las
Vanuatu
Naciones Unidas,
successfully
junto con
passed
un
a
grupo de
resolution
estados,
in the General
Vanuatu
Assembly seeking
ha
an
tenido
advisory opinion
éxito en
from
su
the
solicitud
International Court of
para
Justice
solicitar una
on the
opinión
legal obligation
consultiva
of
de
states
la
as
Corte
it pertains to
Internacional de
climate
Justicia
change.
acerca de las responsabilidades de los
At
estados
this
con
point,
el
I
cambio
would like
climático.
to make
Llegados
a
a este
very
punto,
special mention of
me
our
gustaría hacer una
Pacific youth
mención
and
especial
global youth from which
a nuestra
this
juventud
whole initiative
pacífica y
evolved
juventud
and is now
global,
gaining
de quien
significant
emana
traction.
esta
It is
iniciativa
because of
y
concern
que
for
tiran de
the
ella.
future that
Están
our
preocupados por su
youth have
futuro.
boldly
Y es por
initiated
eso
and
que
taken
nuestra
this
juventud
action. The
inició este
adoption of this
proceso
ICJ
y
resolution
decidió
on
tomar
29
cartas en el
March by
asunto.
consensus is in many ways a testament to the power of multilateralism and the value of the UN,
Esto
even in
supone
the
un
face
poder
of
del
many challenges that we face
multilateralismo.
today. The legal questions contained in the resolution are
Las
careful
cuestiones
balance
legales contenidas en la
achieved
resolución
after extensive consultation with the UN membership
resultan de
and
una
while
larga
safeguarding its
consulta
integrity.
con
At
miembros
the heart
de
of the question
las
is
Naciones
a
Unidas.
desire to
Y
further
en el
strengthen
corazón
our
de la
collective
cuestión se
efforts
encuentra la
to deal with
decisión
climate
de
change,
reforzar nuestros
given
esfuerzos
climate
colectivos
justice
para
the
hacer
importance
frente
it deserves,
al
and
cambio
bring
climático,
the
darle a la
international
justicia
law
climática
to
la
bear on
importancia que
this
merece
unprecedented
e
challenge. We
implicar
believe the ICJ can
al
do
derecho
this.
internacional en
An advisory
estos
opinion is not
desafíos
legally
sin
binding.
precedentes.
However,
Una opinión
it
consultiva
does
no
carry
es
enormous legal weight
legalmente
and moral
vinculante,
authority.
sin embargo,
We
tiene
believe the
peso y
clarity
autoridad.
it will bring
Creemos que
can greater benefit
aportaría
our efforts
claridad
to address
y
the
ello
climate crisis
aportaría
and further
beneficios a nuestros
bolster the
esfuerzos
global
para
and
frenar el
multilateral
cambio
cooperation
climático
and state
y
contact in
aportaría
addressing
también a
climate
nuestra
change.
cooperación
Now that the
internacional.
resolution has been passed, the
Ahora
ICJ,
que la resolución
the
ha sido
Secretary General of the
aceptada,
UN, we
el
have
secretario
officially moved
general
to
de
the next
la
phase.
ONU dijo que nos hemos movido
To date,
hacia la
as
siguiente
mentioned
fase
by
oficialmente.
the chair,
Hoy, como mencionó el
international
presidente,
organizations such as the
organizaciones
IUCN,
internacionales como
Commission
la
of
IUCN,
Island States on
la
Climate Change
Comisión
and
de
International
Estados
Law causes,
Insulares
and
sobre
the
Cambio
EU
Climático y
have
Derecho
received
Internacional
permission from the
y la
ICJ
Unión Europea han
to
recibido
provide
permiso
submissions
del
to the
CIJ
court. Vanuatu is currently in the
para
process
llevar
of
solicitudes
compiling
ante
a
las
template
Cortes.
with
Vanuatu
key
está ahora
elements
mismo elaborando una
of the
plantilla con
questions
elementos
to
clave
assist other states
sobre la
with the
cuestión para
respective
asistir a otros
submissions.
estados con sus
Vanuatu
respectivas
has also
solicitudes.
compiled a list
Vanuatu también
of
ha
pro bono
recopilado una
law
lista
councils and
de
will share
consejos
this with
pro bono
states that may need
y
support.
compartiremos esta
From
lista
the
con
Office
aquellos
of the
estados
Legal
que
Affairs
necesitan
of the UN
apoyo.
Secretariat, the dossier of documents is being assembled and
Se
expected to
está
be
elaborando
completed
un
by
dossier de
mid-July.
documentos en la
Further, we are
Secretaría de
liaising
las Naciones
with the
Unidas.
ICJ registrar to distribute
Más
information
allá de
sheets
eso, estamos
and organize
distribuyendo
information
hojas de
sharing events
información
for stakeholders
y
in the
eventos.
coming months.
Estamos organizando eventos para las partes interesadas
Commencing
en los
next month,
meses que
in July,
vienen. El próximo
Vanuatu,
mes,
with
en
a number
julio,
of co-group countries,
Vanuatu, junto con
will be
un pequeño
hosting
grupo
3
de
workshops
países,
here in New York on main
va a
themes
celebrar 3
of
talleres
the
aquí en Nueva
resolution
York
questions. These thematic areas are climate change and human rights, state responsibility and climate change science and establishing causal impacts. So we sincerely hope that the spirit of cooperation and collaboration that we, UN member states, exhibit through the General Assembly can be translated to the proceedings before the court. Climate change is a critical issue for the entire global community, and especially for our young people who will inherit a world far different from the one we grew up in. We will therefore need all the tools that we have at our disposal to seriously address the most pressing challenge of our time. So we hope with this in mind, we can count on your support for constructive engagement in providing submissions to the ICJ in the coming months. I thank you.
Sometan sus propuestas a la CIJ en los próximos meses. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willing, for outlining more of the cooperation that Vanuatu is organizing for submissions to the International Court of Justice, which is very, very important. Now we're going to move to a little bit more on the law that can help feed into this case. And what we're focusing on today is not the full body of law. As you've seen from the Attorney General's introduction, it's a very broad body of law. There's a lot to draw upon. What we're going to be elevating today is law protecting the rights of future generations, and we have an expert on that who did her first thesis as a student on rights of future generations, and then since then has been leading in advancing rights of future generations internationally, and that is Professor Emily Gaillard from Normandía Chair for Peace and a board member of International Association of Lawyers Against Nuclear Arms. So, Professor Gaillard, the floor is yours.
Científica de la Cátedra y experta en Derechos de las Generaciones Futuras. Le cedo la palabra.
Welcome. Welcome to everybody. Is the sound correct? Do you hear me correctly? Okay, so I'm the scientific director of Normandía Chair for Peace. I'm working aside Tony Oposa, who is the leader, who has planted the seed also for an ICJ advisory opinion in 2016. We played that in the moot court in Hawaii. And the chair emeritus you have already met with Professor Nick Robinson. I would like to present to you, next slide, that in previous cases in front brought to the ICJ, there have been already the very question of rights of future generations that has been raised, and I invite you to have a look on the decent opinion. So first of all, in 1993, ICJ was very pioneer because they already created a special chamber for environmental issues. At that time, international environmental law was very new, and as a new law, it was very audacious, creating new principles. The first case where the question of rights of future generations rose was in 1995. Next slide. It's very, very complicated to explain it now, but it has been dismissed. It was about the nuclear test of France, which was going on. And in a decent opinion, Justice Palmer in 1995 stated that he strictly disagreed with the decision of the ICJ. And he said that new technology has given humankind massive ability to alter the natural environment. And I think it's very important to strengthen that when we talk about rights of future generations, it's very distinguished of rights of youth. I will talk about this later in the second session. When existential threats are at stake, we need a new law with a new frame, a time frame, which is extending to the protection of future generations. And this is really clear in this statement. As you know, also, there is a whole family all around the world. You say that there are pro bono specialists all around the world, and the ICJ can quote and base decision also on academics' work, such as here, there is Professor Brunweiss, which is quoted. So you're already on the next slide. Don't move, Sedvika. So the next slide, I would like to talk about the decent opinion of Justice Christopher Veramantry, who is like the father of rights of future generations somehow. We have a legacy that he has brought to us. He stated that the case before the court raises as no case ever before. And the court has done the principle of intergenerational equity, an important and rapidly developing principle of contemporary environmental law. We were in 1995. My main message today, and I will repeat it later, is that at that time, in the 90s, we were talking about intergenerational equity because we knew that something was going wrong. Now, deeply, I think we are in a new era where we are talking about transgenerational rights, and duties towards future generations. We are in a new era, a new stage. Next slide. The second ICJ case, which rose the very question of protecting rights of future generations, was in 1994 and 1996 on the advisory opinion on the legacy of the threat or use of nuclear weapons. In that historical case, the ICJ had to answer to the question, is the threat or use of nuclear weapons in any circumstances permitted under international law? Next slide. And the ICJ says that it recognizes that the environment is under daily threat and that the use of nuclear weapons could constitute a catastrophe for the environment. It also recognizes that the environment is not an abstraction, but represents the living space, the quality of life, and the very health of human beings, including generations unborn. So here we have clearly a common precedent, a milestone for the next ICJ advisory opinion. And it states also that the existence of the general obligation of states to ensure that activities within their jurisdiction and control respect the environment of other states. So this is the first milestone I wanted to share with you. Next slide. In that precise case, the answer was no. The answer was that actually, if a state has to self-defense, it can threaten or use nuclear weapons. So next slide. Again, there is a huge amount of knowledge and legacy that Justice Christopher Veramente has shared with us in his decent opinion. So he said that this court, the ICJ, as the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, empowered to state and apply international law with an authority matched with no other tribunal, must, in its jurisprudence, pay due recognition to the rights of future generations. So you cannot imagine when I was writing my thesis in 2008, I had this legacy to share with all the academics, and now we are in a new momentum. This is why this event today and what Vanuatu states and all the states are doing now with this climate case is really historical. I want to share with you the message that we are living a momentum. Next slide. I won't stay long, but there has been also another case in 1997. It was about a concept of ecological state of necessity. I don't have time to share anymore on that. The main message would be to say that what do we want to avoid when we talk about rights of future generations? We want to avoid the tragedy of human rights. For those who don't want to green environmental law or human rights, at the end, there will be no more human rights at all, even for present generations. So this is a way I have named this goal, this common goal, to assure a common destiny on this earth. Next slide. So, as I said, the ICJ climate case is a historical momentum. There are three major contexts. First one, we all know that there is a huge and historical wave of climate cases all around the world, and this global context is a major historical signal. The second is that I think that we are living... Next. Next. Yes. No panic. Systemic changes. I will share that in session 2. I will explain to you what is a transformational process in order to transgenerational human rights and to share a new way of highlighting these rights for future generations. And the third context we talk about internormativity processes. You can go next slide, So quickly, this one is the very first case which opened the wave of climate cases. Next slide. To my point of view, the German Supreme Constitutional Court, which stated for the very first time in history that we have fundamental duties towards future generations, is of major inspiration. And this initiate the processes of metamorphosis of human rights. Human rights are not only for today, human rights are for today, future generations, and no more through an anthropocentric paradigm. This will be my second speech of today. Next slide, next slide. And the momentum, as Attorney General said, there is currently an advisory opinion also that has been asked to the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea by small island states on climate change and international law. But again, next slide, and I hope that I saw in the registration list that there will be the UN Permanent Representative of Chile, and Chile and Colombia say that they were looking for an advisory opinion in front of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. So if you see, there is a momentum. Several jurisdictions have now to answer advisory opinion. I don't think that in the history we have faced the same situation ever. And together we have to work all together, do synergies, and this event is for that. So I brought some hard copies of, next slide, of the book Legal Actions for Future Generation, which is the first book published by Normandie Chair for Peace. And I have to shorten my speech because we want to talk with you all. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias por su atención.
Thank you very much, Professor Gaillard, for showing that there is a developing a body of law protecting the rights of future generations, that law itself is expanding, so it's trans-temporal now. It's not just about what is in the moment right now, but what is also stretches into the future. And that's very important, that there are already some precedents in the International Court of Justice that acknowledge and affirm the rights of future generations and the trans-temporal nature of law. And I remember one particular phrase from the nuclear weapons case in '96, which really struck me as showing that the court was taking this approach when it came out with the conclusion that the destructive impact of nuclear weapons cannot be contained in time nor space. That was the conclusion of the court when they looked at the facts of nuclear weapons and their impact over generations. You can say the same thing about carbon emissions. The destructive impact of carbon emissions cannot be contained in time or space. And I think that some of these precedents in the court demonstrate that there is a capacity in the International Court of Justice to really take up this issue, and particularly because the mandate of the court is not just to do treaty interpretation. When it looks at what is the body of law that it can address in deliberating and applying law to specific issues, it's treaties, it's customary law, it's principles of international law, and it's also the teachings of qualified judicians and legal experts. So it can go quite wide, very wide. Probably it's got the widest mandate probably of any court, as well as being the supreme judicial organ of the United Nations. So thank you very much, Emily, for putting forward some of the law that can be taken to the court. Of course, that's just part of the law. There's a lot more that we saw with regards to what the Attorney General was mentioning in his presentation. Now it's time to hear from a slightly younger voice. And as the Attorney General mentioned, this case was really initiated by youth, first by Pacific Island students fighting climate change, with support of one of their professors, Tony Oposa from the Philippines, and the students picked it up, and we actually have the person who's going to speak was one of the students of Tony Oposa from Normandy Chair for Peace. Those Pacific Island students took this up and then developed a world network of young people, World's Youth for Climate Change, who've really taken this forward and also been doing a lot of the legal work and have developed a legal memorandum and other materials on their website. So the representative we have from World's Youth for Climate Justice is Nicole Ponce, originally from Philippines, and she's online. And I think, Nicole, are you ready to give us a little bit from the World Youth for Climate Justice perspective?
Yes, hello, can you hear me well?
Very well, Nicole.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, everyone. Again, I would just like, in the interest of time, I think we don't have a lot of time, but I'd just like to highlight once again that we stand in the shoulders, brave shoulders who came before us. So I'm so grateful, especially to Alyn for inviting us and always going out of his way to make sure that youth take up space in important conversations such as this one. So I'm going to try to make it as brief and concise as possible. I have time to present the work that we've been doing with the Youth Climate Justice Handbook. So, as what the speakers have already said earlier on, there is no general international law instrument which defines the core elements of intergenerational equity, and its legal status is still controversial. So this status quo is quite problematic because there has been evidence and quite overwhelming of the application in international and domestic proceedings, as Alyn has mentioned earlier. It's well known that the ICJ, in its advisory opinion on the legality of threat of the use of nuclear weapons, has referred to the need to protect generations unborn. And in judicial front, there's also a case filed by 16 children against 5 countries before the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, and the case lodged by the Portuguese youth at the European Court of Human Rights against 33 states. And there's also evidence of state practice, which we have witnessed in the case of Minor Oposa versus Factoran, and the case of MC Meta versus Kamal Nas. So, despite the application and reference by many international and domestic courts of the principle of intergenerational equity, in which a utility of rights is grounded, it has not been expressly recognized as customary international law by international courts and tribunals. But following the historic adoption of the UNGA resolution seeking an advisory opinion on climate change and human rights, the youth and civil society, specifically the Pacific Island student fighting climate change, the World's Youth for Climate Justice, with Columbia University's Sabin Center for Climate Change Law, we recently launched what we call the Youth Climate Justice Handbook, which is a tool to assist states in preparing their submissions before the International Court of Justice. And this handbook addresses the obligations of states and the legal consequences under these obligations, and also confronts 3 interrelated crises of the climate, of human rights, and of our planet's ecology. Now, in response to the first question asked, which is, what are the obligations of states under the above-mentioned body of international law to ensure the protection of the climate system and other parts of the environment for present and future generations? So, in our handbook, it's also our response is also embodied in our handbook. I'd like to quickly share with everyone. I don't have a copy, but this is our Youth Climate Justice Handbook, the legal memorandum, which you can also access in our website. Our response to the question on the obligations of state relating to the present and future generations is that first, the overarching legal obligation states both to each other and to present and future generations is ensuring that the climate system and other parts of the environment are protected from anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. And second, taking into account the principle of intergenerational equity, this overarching obligation of states requires protecting the environment for both present and future generations. And third, protecting the environment, including the climate, correlates directly with protecting human rights. Very often, environmental degradation leads to human rights violations. Human rights cannot be enjoyed when severe pollution and climate change curtail, among others, access to health and clean water. So this ICJ advisory opinion can be instrumental in recognizing the relevance of the principle of intergenerational equity and climate change, and connect this to state obligations
ante el cambio
to
climático y
protect the
conectar
rights
las
of the
obligaciones
current
de
and
los
future
estados para
generations
proteger
from
los
the
derechos
adverse
de las
effects of
generaciones
climate
actuales y
change.
futuras de los efectos
Consequently,
adversos del cambio
an
climático.
advisory opinion
Por
on climate
consecuencia,
change and
una
human
opinión
rights
consultiva del
can
cambio
serve to
climático y los
cement
derechos
the status
humanos
of intergenerational
puede
equity as customary
mejorar
international
o
law.
ocupar
Now,
el
this is
estado de
important
la
because
equidad intergeneracional
intergenerational
al ámbito del
equity
derecho
requires that the current generation does
internacional,
not compromise
porque
the needs and
hemos
aspirations of
de
future generations.
asegurarnos
So this
que los
principle has been
designios de las generaciones
extensively
actuales no
developed in
comprometen
international
los
instruments related
deseos y
to
el bienestar de
environmental
las generaciones
conservation
futuras. Y
and
esto tiene
climate
que ver con la
change,
conservación
which recognize the
ambiental
importance of
y con el cambio
preserving
climático,
natural resources for the
teniendo en cuenta la
benefit of present
importancia
and
de la
future
conservación de los
generations.
recursos
So the Global Youth
naturales
and
para
Civil
las
Society Alliance
generaciones presentes y
considers that
futuras.
the upcoming
La
advisory
alianza
opinion offers a
de la
timely
juventud y la sociedad
opportunity
civil
for the court
piensa
to
que una opinión
clarify the
consultiva
applicability and
ofrece
content
una
of the
oportunidad
principle of
única para mostrar la
intergenerational equity.
aplicabilidad y el
Thus,
contenido del
we
principio
urge
de
all
equidad
participating
intergeneracional. Por
states
lo
and
tanto,
international
instamos a
organizations to
todos los estados
support this
parte y a las
argument
organizaciones
that the
internacionales
status
que
of the
apoyen
principle of
esta iniciativa,
intergenerational
que
equity
el
be
estatuto del principio
confirmed
de la
as
equidad
binding international law.
intergeneracional se
So on
confirme como
behalf of the World's
principio
Youth for
vinculante
Climate
del derecho
Justice and the
internacional.
global youth, our goal
Vincular
is to encourage
la
states to
lucha por la
submit
justicia
written
climática en
statements
la juventud
together
global.
with an annex containing the
Combinando,
statements of
queremos
those
que
most
se
impacted by
remitan
climate
documentos
change,
con
especially during
anexos
the
que
first round
hablen
of
de las personas
submissions.
más
So the Youth
impactadas por
Climate
el cambio
Justice
climático.
Handbook can be used
La
as
guía
a tool to strengthen states'
puede ser
arguments before the
utilizada
court
para
and for crafting what we
fortalecer los
call a
argumentos de
youth
los estados
annex.
parte
So this youth
y
annex
para
is to be
añadir lo que llamamos
attached to
el
state
anexo de la
admissions
juventud,
and
que
contain
se puede
arguments
anexionar,
centered
se
on
puede añadir
intergenerational
a
equity,
las
or more broadly, human
remisiones
rights.
que hagan los
So
estados para
to
proteger
wrap
mucho
up my
mejor
presentation,
y
the civil
fundamentar
society
mucho mejor
campaign that
la
first
defensa de
persuaded
los
the Republic
derechos
of
humanos
Vanuatu, and through their
intergeneracionales.
leadership, governments
Saludamos
throughout the
las
world,
iniciativas
has
del
since
gobierno de Vanuatu y
its
3 otros
inception
estados
been
que
propelled and
desde el
energized by
principio ha
students
sido
and young people.
energizada
So the
y
successful adoption
propulsada
of UNJ
por personas
resolution
jóvenes.
was
El
achieved
éxito
through
de las
strong
resoluciones de las
partnerships
Naciones
between
Unidas
high
de la
ambition
UNGA fue el
governments
fruto
and organized
de
youth and
la
civil
alta ambición
society
de los
partners.
gobiernos y de la
So Vanuatu's
sociedad
prime
civil,
minister
así como
was
de los
precisely
jóvenes
correct in
organizados. El
describing the
primer ministro del
upcoming
Vanuatu
ICJ climate advisory
describió
proceedings as a young
los
generation's
procedimientos
call
ante la Corte
for
Internacional de Justicia,
justice to the world's highest
los
court.
describió como un llamado de la
So
juventud y lo
although only
dijo
states are
muy
permitted to
correctamente.
participate in the ICJ proceedings,
Pueden
but all
participar
participating
todos los
states are
estados
able to use those
miembros
proceedings to
y los
strengthen
estados
and
pueden
build
utilizar
upon the
esos
youth
procedimientos
government
para
alliances
fortalecer
that
y
succeeded in
construir
bringing
las
climate change
alianzas
and
entre
soon climate
estados
justice to the
y
Peace
juventud
Palace. So we strongly
que
urge
tanto
all
éxito han
governments,
tenido en llevar la
particularly
resolución
climate
ante la Corte.
vulnerable states,
Instamos a
not
que
merely to
todos los gobiernos,
participate
sobre
in the
todo el de
ICJ
los estados más
proceedings,
vulnerables, no
but
solo
in doing
participen
so
en los
also
procedimientos ante la
ensure
Corte,
the
sino que
voices
se
of their
aseguren dentro
young
de su
people
participación
are heard
que las
clearly and that
voces
their
de
testimony
los
is placed
jóvenes y
before the
las
court.
jóvenes se
We urge
escucha y su
every
testimonio
participating state
es
to
remitido
involve
ante la
young
Corte.
change
Invitamos a
makers
todos
that
los
are
estados
actively
parte a
working
que
to prevent
impliquen e
climate
inviten
injustice
a
in their
los
country in
jóvenes
their written and
líderes
oral submissions to the
implicados
court,
en la justicia
whether this
climática
occurs
en sus
directly
países
or
a que colaboren
indirectly,
en sus
in
contribuciones
person
ante la
or through
Corte,
audiovisual
bien
technology. It is
directamente,
essential
bien
that it be
de
done.
manera
So thank you
escrita o
very
bien de
much
manera
everyone for your
audiovisual.
time
Muchísimas
and
gracias a todo el
attention.
mundo por su
Yeah, I'll be
tiempo, por su
happy to take
atención
questions later on, and I'll
y
also
podremos
send
responder después a
our
cualquier
contact
pregunta o
information
comentario
in the
y les
chat.
enviaré nuestra
Thank you.
información de contacto en el chat también. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for both your presentation and also for the leadership of World's Youth for Climate Justice and Pacific Island students fighting climate change. Incredible leadership for and organizing from youth. The handbook that you've mentioned there and told is on your website, the World Youth for Climate Justice. It's also on Normandy Chair for Peace website, and we included links in the follow-up to the registration that all of the in-person people have made, and we'll also follow up with the people online. If you don't see it on the chat, we'll follow up. We now come to some time for interventions and questions. I invite Professor Gaillard and Mr. William to come back onto the stage in case there are any questions of them. We will have mics. So this is either intervention, comments, or questions. We will ask first if there are any representatives from UN missions or international organizations. And if it's an intervention, please keep it to 2 minutes or less. And we have a microphone which we can bring around. Oh, there's a microphone at the back also. So Professor Guyard and Mr. William up here. And if you can let me know if you've got a question or an intervention. I see Jonathan Granoff.
Muy bien, Jonathan Granoff,
can you introduce yourself before you give your question or
presentar?
intervention?
Sure. I have a couple of titles.
Tengo sí, un par de cuestiones con respecto.
Can you put the microphone a bit closer to you, Jonathan, so that
how's this?
Yeah, that's better.
Thank you. Formally, I'm the permanent observer for the International Anti-Corruption Academy, which has an observer status in the General Assembly. I'm also the president of the Global Security Institute and the senior advisor to the Committee on National Security of the International Law Section of the American Bar Association. So I wanted to just pose the counterfactual, which is found in the international law of property of the Oxford academics, sort of like the Blackstone on the subject. And it sums it up very clearly. The right to destroy is an inherent component of the global right to property. Civil law and common law scholars have traditionally called it the jus abutendi. It's a Roman concept. The right to consume, transform, and abuse. Despite its fundamental nature, the right to destroy is rarely made explicit in domestic or municipal law. And it seems to me that I was once briefed by Senator Ed Markey, who juxtaposed the Civil War in the United States as a battle between absolute property rights, the right to own human beings, the absolute most horrific property right, versus the most minimum human right, the right of people to be citizens. And to some extent, it appears to me that this fight over the future of the global commons is very similar, that this is a struggle of the fundamental human right to have a sustainable environment, which has now been recognized thanks to Costa Rica's leadership in the General Assembly, versus this absolute property right to destroy the commons. And I think that normal people could understand that. That's a very effective framing of the argument, in my opinion.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do either of the panelists want to address this?
I can quickly answer. Okay. So indeed, what you say is from Roman law. And this way of thinking is binary, or subject of law on one side and object of law on the other side. And this is exactly what is bringing us to the tragedy of human rights. And the change of paradigm is here to move on non-anthropocentric way of thinking within human rights. If I want to use a word which is stronger, I would say that we need to enter in a process of decolonization of the notion of property. But we can be in the middle also. We can say that now we don't have the right to destroy the patrimony of future generations. So all the work done by Professor Edith Brandweiss was to propose a Earth trusteeship lenses. We are holding this Earth as trustee for future generations. And this way of thinking is part of the common ancestral laws of all indigenous people all around this world. And also, she said, Professor Brandweiss, that when she studied all religions, it's also of common sense. So thank you for strengthening on this way, because this absolutely property conception is an infringement for future generations. In my work, I talk about a principle of temporal non-discriminations to say that if we don't take care of the future, not only future generation, because you understood that my way of thinking is transtemporal,
transnational and transspecies. And I say, if you don't take care of the future, you're committing an abuse of powers upon the future. In order to counterbalance this abuse of power, we have to recognize a principle of temporal non-discrimination.
Thank you, Professor Guyler. Professor Robinson, did you want to make a comment on this also?
No, thank you very much, Alyn. I think it's very important that we also identify some of the decisions that the United Nations has taken that are based on the stewardship of nature and the stewardship of the planet. The General Assembly adopted the World Charter for Nature, which is an integral set of principles that provide a counter narrative to this idea of property rights, a joint solidarity of responsibility for nature. And so I think the World Charter for Nature needs to be one of the seminal documents that we bring to the court. Another interesting sense of obligation which states have is the duty to conduct environmental impact assessments. Nearly every nation has a national law on environmental impact statements, impact assessments. And the International Court of Justice has already decided in the case of Argentina versus Uruguay, the pulp mills case, that states have an obligation under customary international law to assess the impact of their actions on neighboring states or on the commons. So this is already customary law. The fact that states are not engaged in actively trying to figure out how they are harming the commons, the atmosphere, is a violation of that customary duty, that international law duty. And I think, again, these tools like environmental impact assessment are available for nations to take action, both in the sense of their responsibility and the consequences of that. So we need to mine, if you will, or look carefully at the existing instruments of policy and the principles of law, which are providing a basis for solidarity and common stewardship. Thank you very much, Alyn.
Thank you very much. We do have some questions online, but I'll take one more for intervention or question from the floor before we go to the ones that are online. Do we have another question, a comment or question from the floor? Yes. Can you bring the mic up the front?
Sí, micrófono aquí, por favor.
Thank you so much. Good morning to you all. My name is Ware and I'm the PR of Tuvalu to the UN. I've got two comments. One is on the aid loss advisory opinion. And the second one is on the FFNPT. But before I make comments on those two issues, let me at the outset say thank you so very much to Vanuatu and Costa Rica for co-hosting this very important event, and the chair of the Normandía piece. I was listening intently to the exchange of to the comments from the opening statement from the Attorney General of Vanuatu and of course our presenters and the comments that has been made earlier. To me, this event has been a very enriching event, and I'm trying to think aloud of the impact of the outcome of the advisory opinion from the ICJ as well as the one from the IDLOS. Nonetheless, my comment on the IDLOS, Tuvalu being one of the members of the COSIS, the Commission on the
Tuvalu es uno de los miembros de la Comisión de los Pequeños Estados Insulares con respecto al cambio climático y el derecho internacional, que comenzó, digamos, el procedimiento de petición de una opinión consultiva ante el TIDM. Y bueno, pues esa opinión va a recibirse pronto y pensamos
we have been trying to encourage members to also make submissions to that. So
y hemos
I believe there has been an
remitir el máximo número de contribuciones
from May and
posibles,
probably to June. I don't know whether it has been closing
seguramente hasta
already
mayo
or
o
maybe
hasta
tomorrow.
junio.
The last day, but
quizá hoy o mañana sean los últimos días.
I
Hemos
just
podido
want to take the
contribuir,
opportunity
como digo, hasta hoy, esta mañana.
encourage
Quería,
members because it is the same
incitar y animar a los miembros
legal
que contribuyan,
opinion that we are trying to ascertain
porque es el mismo tipo de opinión legal que estamos pidiendo al TIDM,
Attorney
al
General
Tribunal
for
Internacional de
Vanuatu,
Derecho del Mar, y hemos escuchado decir al fiscal general de
advisory
Vanuatu
opinion from the ITLOS
que
will have
la
a lot
opinión
of
consultiva
impact to the
del
ICJ's consideration
TIDM
of this
tendrá mucho impacto sobre la
advisory opinion
opinión
request
de la
from
Corte Internacional de
Vanuatu,
Justicia, requerido
through the
también
General Assembly of the
o
UN.
propuesta por Vanuatu ante la Asamblea
The
General
issue that
de
I
las Naciones Unidas
would
y
really like to
solicitada por
comment
ella.
on was
Me gustaría también
the
comentar
fossil fuel
con
non-proliferation
respecto
treaty.
al Tratado de No
As mentioned
Proliferación
by the Attorney General, Tuvalu and
de
Vanuatu
combustibles fósiles, como decía
is
el
taking the
fiscal
lead
general de
role
Vanuatu.
in that
Vanuatu
initiative.
está llevando un liderazgo en torno
And
a
it
esta
is an
iniciativa.
initiative that if
Se
we
trata de
really
una
look into
iniciativa
it,
que
while we are waiting for these legal opinions or the advisory opinion from these two international
y soportando, estamos
the tribunal and the Court of Justice,
apoyando.
We don't have to wait for the outcome and then start working on it.
No hemos
I suppose that
quedarnos con los
we
brazos
should
cruzados.
continue the
Hemos de
momentum
ser
of working on this.
proactivos y proactivas, aprovechando
The issue of the
buen momento.
NPT is something that I guess not many of us really understand
creo que
the
no
action of
todo el
it.
mundo ha entendido hasta dónde
In
llega
the Paris
esa
Agreement,
cuestión.
there is no
Porque
mention of whatsoever of fossil
en los
fuel.
acuerdos de París no hay ninguna
And if we
mención
look at the
explícita
whole
a los combustibles
climate
fósiles.
crisis that everybody
Y
are
si nos
working on,
fijamos
is
en la
all
crisis
about
climática que estamos
the
enfrentando todo el mundo,
fossil
sabemos
fuel. The
que
root
el
cause
origen,
of
que la causa
the
clara de
human-induced
todo ello
climate change
es
emission. So it is
las
something that
emisiones
we really have
procedentes
to,
de los combustibles
as we
fósiles
progress our
de
work on
origen
this, to also
antropogénico.
I encourage the
Hemos
member
de ser
countries
conscientes de ello
to start
y por
thinking
ello
of joining this
incito y
the
animo a
movement
los
to
países miembros a que se
to
sumen
work on
al
a
movimiento
more a solid
de
foundation of getting to the root cause
creación de
of
una,
the climate change
de
or
una
the
base más sólida
impact of this emission.
para atacar
And having
esta fuente
a
de emisiones
non-proliferation treaty on
de
fossil
efecto
fuel
invernadero.
will really help
Conseguir
us
un
address this
tratado
issue.
de no proliferación de combustibles fósiles ayudará enormemente.
Thank you very much, the Representative Tuvalu. Mr. William, do you want to follow up on either of those points? The ITCLOS procedure and the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty.
Mr. William?
Thank you,
Mr.
Moderator.
Perdón, de combustibles fósiles. Se corrige el intérprete.
Can you hold the mic just a little bit closer to you so they can hear online? Thank you.
Un poquito más cerca
Thank
del
you.
micrófono, por favor.
Just
Muchísimas gracias.
picking from what the ambassador is
Muchísimas gracias.
sharing with us.
Al
I think
embajador,
these two
creo
initiatives
que
are very
estas dos
complementary
iniciativas son
in
muy
each other, so we
complementarias
anticipate
entre
that
sí, y
an
lo
advisory
que
opinion from
anticipamos
ITLOS
es
will
que una
be
opinión consultiva por
delivered
parte del
before the
Tribunal Internacional
ICJ
de Derecho
one,
del
so
Mar
we see some very strong
llegará
connections in both
seguramente
and they're
antes
supporting each other
de la
in
de
so
la Corte
many ways.
Internacional de Justicia
And I think
y
this
pensamos que pueden ser
alliances in supporting
mutuamente
I know
coadyuvantes.
the like-minded countries that are affected by
Países
climate
de
change.
la misma
This coalition
opinión
that we are
y
building
afectados
is building
también por el cambio
momentum, and
climático
we see a lot of support, and
están
it's a good step in the right direction.
construyendo haciendo un movimiento muy fuerte.
Thank you very much. And maybe I'll just add a little bit more just to remind member states and also the international organizations that your first written statement, whether it's to ITLOS or to the ICJ, doesn't have to be exhaustive. It's the start of the process. If you make a written submission, you can then participate in the follow-up comments to submissions that others have made, and you also can follow up even that further with the oral hearings, particularly with the ICJ case. So again, emphasizing the Attorney General's comments that we want to make sure there aren't barriers to participation. We encourage submissions, even if one can't put in a really exhaustive submission in the first round. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We had, I think, another request for the floor from the back.
Creo que hay alguien que pide el
So,
micro al
can you
fondo.
introduce yourself and then
¿Puede
your question
presentarse
or your
y
comment?
luego
Yes, it's just
hacernos su pregunta?
a brief intervention or
Sí,
comment. I'm
solamente
Jose
un pequeño
Hernandez, the legal
comentario.
Can you bring
advisor.
your microphone a bit
Yes,
closer?
I'm legal
¿Puede acercar
advisor
su
of the
micrófono?
Permanent Mission of Chile
Soy
to the UN,
consejero
Jose
jurídico
Hernandez, and I
de
wanted to thank
Chile, de la
the
ONU,
organizers, the permanent missions of
y
Costa
quiero
Rica and
agradecer
Vanuatu, and
a los
also the
representantes de la
Normandy
misión
Chair for
permanente
Peace.
de
I
Costa
just
Rica y de
wanted
Vanuatu
to
y
make
también la
a
Cátedra
short comment
Normandía
on
por la paz. Solamente quería hacer
because it
un
was mentioned
breve
the
comentario
submission of Chile
porque usted
and
mencionó
Colombia to the
la
Inter-American Court of
propuesta
Human Rights that is
de la
ongoing.
solicitud de Chile y
We believe
Colombia ante
also
la
that this
Corte
mutually reinforcing process in these three
Interamericana de Derechos
different
Humanos.
tribunals.
Quisiera
The Inter-American
mencionar
Court
que
of Human Rights is a
que la
different
Corte
process, but
Interamericana
is open
es
also
un
for
proceso
states, especially for
diferente,
American states, but also
pero
for
está
many
abierta también
other states
a
to receive
estados
amicus
americanos
curiae
y otras
intervention. So it's also an ongoing process.
para recibir
In terms of
intervenciones, así que es
our
un proceso
participation in the ITLOS advisory
que está
opinion, I
siendo
want to
llevado a
mention that
cabo.
we also made a
Quisiera
written statement
mencionar
last
también
week,
que
and we
hicimos una
supported
solicitud
the
escrita la semana
jurisdiction that
pasada
was
apoyando a
requested
la
by the
jurisdicción
COSIS. So we want to
solicitada por el
thank
COSIS.
very
Así
much
que muchísimas
Vanuatu
gracias a
and all the
Vanuatu,
presentations today that
a
were
todas las
very
presentaciones
helpful,
de
and
hoy
including the Attorney
que
General.
han sido muy
We
útiles,
are going to
incluida la
participate,
del
I'm
fiscal
pretty
general.
sure, in the
Vamos
follow-up,
a
including
participar
the
sin
ICJ
duda
proceedings.
en
And I want to
los
thank the
procedimientos
organization.
ante la
Thank you.
CIJ y quiero simplemente
Thank you
agradecer
very much.
la
So,
organización.
did anyone want to
Gracias.
respond to that? It was just an
Muchísimas gracias.
intervention.
No sé si
Professor
alguien
Gayard, you wanted to say
quiere
something?
comentar algo.
Muchas
Profesora
gracias.
Gayard.
I think this is exactly what we wanted with this
Eso es
event, to
exactamente lo que
create
pretendemos con
synergies,
este
to gather
evento,
all
crear
the forces,
sinergias,
all the guardians of
reunir
nature,
fuerzas
and to
a todos
coordinate,
los
because
guardianes
there
de
are
la
so many
naturaleza y coordinarnos,
many
porque hay
expertise on those fields,
tanta
and
experiencia en esos
the
campos.
initiative through human rights
La
is very
iniciativa
important
a
in the
través de los derechos humanos es
Inter-American
muy
Court, because it
importante
has more
en
a
la
social
Corte
analysis of
Interamericana
human rights,
porque
whereas
más
in
bien
European
un
Court
análisis
of Human Rights
social
more
de los
liberal,
derechos humanos,
and in the
mientras que en
Inter-American
Europa la
Court of Human
Corte
Rights you can
de
also
derechos humanos
ask
es
for
más
the
liberal,
respecting
y también
soft
en Europa
laws. So this is
se le
really,
puede
really
solicitar a la
super
Corte de Derechos Humanos que
innovative, and I
respete
think this
la
initiative is
soft law,
really
la ley
going to
blanda.
open also good path for
Creo que
rights of future
esta
generations. Thank you
iniciativa
so
va a
much.
sentar un buen precedente para los
Thank you
derechos de
very
las
much. I know
generaciones
there was
futuras.
another comment
Muchísimas
from the
gracias.
floor. Yeah.
¿Había otro comentario por ahí?
Thank you. My name is
Gracias.
Paul Rahmat.
Soy Paul Rahmat
From Vivat International, an
de
NGO
Vivat
with COSOC
International,
status.
una ONG.
I want to ask, what's the
gustaría
significance of
¿qué significa?
submission from civil society of individual states, while the
¿Cuál es el
IGC don't
significado
recognize that
de la
submission of
solicitud
that? I need
de
some
la sociedad civil?
clarifications
La
and
CIJ
emphasizes of the
reconoce estas
significance of
solicitudes.
these
Necesito un poco
efforts from the
de
civil
que me
society,
esclarezcan
youth,
esta
or
cuestión.
individual states, while the IGC don't recognize that. Thank you.
Me gustaría saber si
If I
realmente son
understand your
propuestas que la
question
CIJ
correctly, it's what are the
tiene
efforts of
en cuenta eso.
society and
Si
how they'll
entendí
be
bien su
included
pregunta,
in the
me está
submissions.
preguntando
Did I
que cuáles
understand
son los
that question
esfuerzos de la
correctly?
sociedad civil y cómo puede ser
Okay. I
incluida
think I'll go to
en las
Nicole
solicitudes.
first on this one, and then
Vale.
maybe come back to Professor Gayard and
Bueno,
Mr. William. Nicole?
primero me gustaría que respondiera Nicole y luego la profesora
Hello,
Gayard.
Alyn, sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Sí, perdona,
The question
no
wanted to know a
entendí la
little bit
pregunta.
more about how
Sí,
civil
pregunta
society is
cómo la
engaging
sociedad
in the
civil
submissions into this case? You mentioned a bit in your presentation, but I think you want a little bit more. And maybe it's to help some of the other representatives of civil society know how they can be involved.
Yeah, that's a very timely question. For example, when we had our event in The Hague last 20th of June, we had strategy meetings as well with the ambassador of Bangladesh and also from ambassador from Thailand. And one of the things they raised in a way to help states to help encourage states to file their submissions is to write for everyone, civil society and the youth as well, to write to their Commission on Human Rights and make it an open letter and make it known that this effort, this campaign is happening. So that's one effective way to do that. Start with your Commission on Human Rights and then write to your Department of Justice and make it an open letter, get people to sign on it, and just to encourage your own governments to actually file a submission. And if along the way the representatives from Vanuatu also mentioned this, to how to lower the barriers to entry, one way of doing that, as we have known by now that states also need the technical and legal support, that Vanuatu is very much available and open to help states in terms of the legal and technical support. So we can definitely reach out to us, WICJ, we have our website, or PISFCC, if you need help in terms of reaching out to your government, whichever country you are. We're a global network at this point, so we'll be able to connect you to the people who are working on the campaign on the ground. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and thank you also for, in your initial presentation, reminding of the possibility and the practice for written submissions to include an annex, whereby a state, for example, that's putting in a statement can put what their perspective is, the law, their position, etc., in there, and then add as an annex a reference to like voices of youth or a statement from youth or something that may not necessarily be their policy, but they can add it as an annex. And we've had that in previous advisory opinions. We had some of the countries put in annexes on, I know we had one from Joseph Rotblat that was attached to the Costa Rica submission. There was another one which was a memo from the International Committee for Red Cross. They didn't have standing, so that was annexed to one of the other submissions. So the annex process is actually, it's got the practice in there for a state to be able to add something, which they want to refer to either from youth or from a scientific perspective as well, that may not be in the body of their submission. So thank you for that reminder, Nicole. I'll just go to Mr. William if there's any more, or to Professor Gaillard on that question, any other aspects for engagement of civil society? Mr. William, did you have any more comments on that? They've already been covered. Okay, I think that brings us pretty much to a close of this session. I want to thank very much our speakers, including Mr. William, Professor Gaillard, Nicole, Professor Robinson, and of course the presentation from the Attorney General. And thank you very much to the Vanuatu team for providing the capacity for the Attorney General to speak. We will be putting these up on the event pages soon. They're not there yet, but if you wanted to like to re-look at the Attorney General's speech, for example, we will have that available soon, and all of those who registered online, we will be doing a follow-up to that. We'll be having a short coffee break now, and then we'll come back in 15 minutes, so at 11:35, and then the second session is going to be looking at the linking of the International Court of Justice case on climate and pushing the UN Summit of the Future. Not only that, there are other ways of following up after the court, but particularly to make sure this case is not going to just stand alone as a court case. We want it to influence process, and the UN Summit of the Future is going to be a really important one. So we'll have those connections in the next session. So have a great break. Feel free to talk with each other, and we will see you back here in 15 minutes. Thank you very much.